This is not representative of the rest of the farm because this field's particularly sandy. A sandy field which is very difficult to manage. It's had years of intensive agriculture. We've grown carrots on it for 30 years. If we look here and we dig a hole, it's not going to be very pretty. We haven't met any obstructions with the spade, but there's no worms. And it's just sand. So what we've done here is take some of the degraded soil down to the arable field and some of the soil down to the hedge bottom. So this has not been cultivated in decades. It's how it should be. It's not very good soil, it's sandy soil, but on the other hand it's got living roots,
some worms.
Loads of worms.
This is our aim and this is where we're currently at. So that's how far we've got to go to get our organic matter to this and not this.
What is more apparent is that we've lost organic matter because it's been turned over by cultivators for the last century or two, maybe more, and it's lost this organic matter, which is the bit that holds the water, holds the nutrients, holds the fungi. So what we've discovered since we started direct drilling is that we're not disturbing the soil and we've got a slow build-up of organic matter. This is something I think other farmers need to quantify, their level of organic matter, whether it's going up or down, and if it's going down, what are they going to do about it? And what we're trying to do is point a direction and prove that it's financially viable so that we can all build our organic matter levels.
With a no-till drill, we're basically not moving the soil. So we're keeping it in its place, and we do this over the whole farm. And we don't disturb the soil, and we just slot the seed in, and the seed then grows, and it mimics nature. That's how nature would naturally plant a seed. We've seen less flooding, less compaction within our soil. We're also more drought resilient because of the, what we're planting and how we're drilling it. So using this drill with a no-till drill, and yeah, we're just a bit more future-proof, really. We have it's called controlled traffic farming, and basically what we do is, when we drive any vehicles on the field, we try not to compact the land. So if we're tipping, we only tip on tram lines, or we only tip on actually off the field. We basically want our fields to be, according to what I've read, we want them to be full of living roots and quite squishy, like if you walked across, a grass field, it's quite squishy underfoot, whereas when you ploughed fields for years, they can get quite hard and compacted, and then roots struggle to grow down into the soil, whereas we want roots to be able to shoot right down, but obviously we're not turning the soil anymore. So the less compaction of tractors that we have on the field, the better, so that they have that chance of becoming that spongy goodness, and the living roots can just shoot down. That's
You're compacting it with an harvester?
Yeah, but we're only doing this once a year. So this goes over every field, but it only happens once a year, and then it won't go onto that field again. And the tractors don't go on the field with it, they stay in the tram lines and things like that.
Compaction is when soil the structure is being destroyed. You can think of a beautiful soil that looks like chocolate cake crumbs, or you can think of a soil like a big lump of concrete. And so what's happening is those chocolate cake crumbs are becoming compacted and losing the structure, and the air is being squeezed out of the soils. So if you imagine compacted soil, it's like soil that's being suffocated. And if you haven't got the oxygen in the soil, the roots can't work. The whole complex web of life within the soil is being suffocated, and the water has difficulty percolating, which makes crops much more vulnerable to drought, as well as greater risk of flooding to the rural communities.
For that we're in the mud.
These are kind of the first times that I've dug holes in this plot, and being able to see the worms is just so satisfying. Knowing that there's biological activity going on in the soil is really good to see. What is promising is that you can see that there's organic matter going all the way down to the bottom of the hole. I mean, now we've got from here down, it's clay, but it's brown, it's got organic matter in. Clay can be quite difficult because, it acts like a pot. So if you're making clay, if it dries out too much, then it cracks. And if it's too wet, then it's like slippy. So that can be quite difficult to work with. I think as long as I add a lot of compost and things and mulch, that'll help with that. So. So the worms are, I don't really like using human terms, but they're the engineers of the soil. So they do a lot of the work of moving nutrients around and breaking up the soil as well. So they eat plant matter and then turn that into soil. They are the farmers, really.
The soil biology, all those creatures within the soil, the fungi, the bacteria, all the invertebrates, the worms, are all working, providing a phenomenal service to make our soils alive and to make them work, to reduce flooding, to store carbon, and to detoxify and provide a whole range of other services. But they need food, and their food comes from plant material. And it can be part digested through dung, or it can be plant roots, or it can be in the form of composts and mulches. So they just need to be fed all the time. If you don't feed that biology, it starts dying, the diversity starts decreasing, and you start losing those services that the soils are achieving for us.
It's all about feeding the soil. That's how we grow healthy plants. Rather than spraying them or adding nutrients to the plants, we're actually adding things to the soil that means that the soil builds its fertility and unlocks the things that are already in it. We are at the end of August, start of September. We had over a month and a half without any noticeable rain. I think we maybe got 0.5 mil in all that time. And you can see that the ground is the surface. The rain did make it into the surface here, so it is crumbly on the surface. But there are big cracks in the ground and it's very hard underneath. Basically, it just all dried up all the way down. And that was why all of our new seedlings just really struggled, because we would have had to water so much just to rehydrate the soil. It's also not surprising to me. We know, and we have known for a long time, that our climate is becoming more unstable and uncertain, and temperatures have been rising.
What we've done over the industrial age is we've taken carbon out of the soil in the form of fossil fuels, and we burnt them and the carbon's gone up. What we just need to do is get that carbon and put it back in the soil again. And it can be done for free by plants. And the carbon that's in the soil just needs to stay there. How does it stay there? By suitable cropping practices, keeping the soil covered, diversity as much as possible, integrating livestock where you can, reduce soil disturbance. These simple techniques applied in a multi-level of ways is what we're doing. You're taking that carbon and putting it back in the soil again.
A leaf of chard that's been badly eaten by slugs, no one's going to buy that or want to eat it, but it will go into the compost and it will break down and it will make great healthy new soil. So actually food waste is only a waste because it goes into landfill, or a waste because we put that time and energy into growing it and it didn't get eaten. But the transport and the packaging and all of those things, that's the waste. The food recycles. Any food that I've taken to market, anything that's left, I will take to a food bank or a local community kitchen and it will get used to feed people in need. Any food that is not good enough to even take to market will go straight into the compost and go back into making healthy future soil. So yeah.
These even look nice. They look like nice leaves, but they are much tougher than and less nice to eat than the ones in the middle of the plant. So these lettuces will grow again. I clear the leaves and I just leave them on the paths like this. I don't even bother taking them out of the polytunnel and putting them in the compost, because they will just compost down in the path, and all of that goodness and fertility that plant mined from the soil will stay in here. I'm not removing any of that. As you can see on the paths, I've laid this sheep's wool, which was surplus sheep's wool from Jacob the shepherd, who grazed his sheep here last spring. And this is a bit of an experiment. I haven't seen anyone else do it, but wool is a very good moisture retainer, and I'm using it as a mulch to keep the moisture in the ground on the paths, and also as a weed barrier to stop weeds from growing, just to try and make my life a bit easier. This straw I put on at the end of last year as a way of covering soil that I didn't have plants growing in, which will have helped protect the soil over the winter. But also it's an additional carbon source that slowly breaks down and adds more organic matter to the soil. And then literally just over here, this soil has been more exposed to the element. It's already drying out on the surface just because of the wind, and it's much more sticky. But then look, there's a worm immediately. So the worms love this soil, which is really nice to see. I call this tilthing. So it is a form of tillage, but it's only disturbing the very, very top layer of soil, which just allows me to get seed in with my seed drill, and it'll have good soil contact. So you can really tell how much of an improvement we've made on the soil as well here, because this last year I had to go through it 2 or 3 times to get anywhere near this kind of tilth, but this is really nice. There is some like thick clay bits, but that will just slowly improve over time as I add more and more organic matter. But I'm really chuffed with this, it looks really nice.
My relationship to the soil is massively important. Soil is what everything grows out of that we eat, or that animals eat, that then we eat them. So it's hugely important to life. If we didn't have it, we wouldn't be alive. So we need to sustain that and then regenerate it. We can't just keep it as it is now. I think we can address the biodiversity crisis and the climate crisis through soil. Soil's got the answer for both of those two things. And this regenerative farming, the way that we manage soil, is the key to unlocking its potential to reverse those crises. So.
A short-term trampling by the cattle and then them coming off stops the soil being sort of tight and compacted on the surface. And so when it rains, the water will percolate through rather than run off the surface of the soil. Your soils are much more resilient. They're holding more water, resilient to flooding and also drought.
With these drier springs we're getting, you want this pasture to be holding that moisture in for these dry Aprils that we keep getting.
So yeah, we've got some worms in there, and they're doing a good job increasing the permeability of the soil and recycling nutrients, which is all down to your management. You can see how you're offsetting any emissions from your animals by the carbon you're stored in the soil, and with your management as well.
So they're a really important tool to adding organic matter into our soil.
It's all about the soil, isn't it, really?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I know.
An estimate of the carbon stored in the soils in the UK is about 10 billion tonnes of carbon. That's equivalent to about 80 years of greenhouse gas emissions from the UK. Soils are absolutely phenomenal in the amount of carbon they can store.
The style of grazing we're using, the mob grazing, is all about high impact grazing for short periods where they are on a small area of the field for one day and then we move them on again. And then they don't return to graze that field for another 60 to 90 days. So it's getting this long rest period. All the plants can rest and recover, so they can set seed, they can flower. It's increasing habitat for pollinators and insects. So the root system will massively expand during that rest period and improve the soil structure through that better rooting action. That improves water infiltration. So all these sort of benefits from the high impact mob grazing that we get improves our productivity. So we've had like the driest July, I think, on record for many parts of the UK. You can still see how dry it is. Here, a lot of the old grasses are burning up. Last spring, in May of 2021, I overseeded the farm here with herbal leys. So we grazed it down really tight, went in with an overseeder, scratched these really nice, diverse herbal leys into the pasture that was here before. So these varieties of the herbal ley are providing their worth now in this extremely dry weather we're having. They're so resilient. As you can see here, we've got chicory, the red clovers here, the slightly bigger leaves. We've got plantain here as well. So yeah, there you go. You can see already that that's a good 6 inches down into the soil, and I've broken off the tip as well. So when modern ryegrasses are only rooting this has got another 4 inches on that. This root is going deep down into the soil profile. It's helping to break up any compaction that might be in this area here. And then this deep root is feeding, it's pumping carbon and sugars deep down into the soil, all the way down there, and feeding a larger area of those soil microbes. And then that's also bringing minerals back up and into the leaves for the cows to eat. And then next door, where my neighbours are continually grazing their pasture, there's a lot of bare soil. There's a lot of yellowy, dead grass because it's just burnt off in the extreme heat and the drought. These are going to be hugely beneficial and a key part of our farm. Probably every acre I land that I can get herbal leys onto, I will.
So many farmers are reporting erratic, infrequent or highly variable weather events that may not have happened in the past. And the main challenges are drought and flood. And a healthy soil can store a lot more moisture in a period of drought. And where the structure is really loose or you've got a good soil structure, those roots can go deep and access water held deep within the soil profile. So what you have is plants growing even in periods of drought, or plants that are surviving where otherwise they might have died. Alternatively, in times of flood, a healthy soil profile can store huge volumes of water, and it can also delay the movement of that water into the watercourses, so it forms a longer lag phase to that peak flow in the rivers. And delaying that lag flow will benefit rural communities, urban communities, because rather than massive floods, you've got this staggered release of water through time. So a healthy soil is important for all of us. Additional advantage of a high organic matter soil is really good at holding on to nutrients. So if there's a level of nutrients that has been put in the soil, either organic manures or fixed through clovers or in fertiliser, soils with organic matter can hold on to it and gradually release it to the plants. If you've got no organic matter or very little and very little clay content, those nutrients quite often get washed through the soil, which is called leaching, and they're washed out, so it's a waste of money, but it also can cause considerable environmental damage and sort of pollution of lakes and streams and killing fish and such like. For a farmer, healthy soils is good for the business resilience and the business productivity. They can reduce input costs, they're supporting the environment, they're supporting the communities. And there is additionally a sort of a new emerging market for the sale of carbon credits. So a carbon credit is, in effect, a unit of carbon that an area of land has been able to store in addition to normal working activities.
So one of the major criticisms of livestock farming is it's adding to and contributing to the climate change. But what's amazing about your carbon footprint is that with all your landscape features, the hedgerows, the woodland, is actually you're capturing, you're storing more greenhouse gases than you're emitting.
Well, that's brilliant news, isn't it?
It's absolutely amazing. So this is the carbon balance of your farm. So here we have your emissions. These are the offsets. So offsets is all the parts of your farm that are taking greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And the black is your carbon balance. So what is happening is this figure is negative, which means you are removing more greenhouse gases from the atmosphere than you're actually emitting.
It's awesome, isn't it? I mean, there's such a great marketing tool for us now to be able to say, we're managing our hedgerows in this way, and they're sequestering more carbon than our cows are emitting. So the hedgerows are amazing anyway.
Yeah.
And the woods are pretty good, but the soil has absolutely smashed it. That is such a huge figure that we really should be pushing farmers to be adopting more of these practices to push this.